Good evening. A couple of days ago, I posted an interview with horror writer Brian Asman with his book Return of the Living Elves. He gave me permission to read an excerpt, and I thought maybe it would be a fun, festive, holiday horror thing to do. And I just wasn't sure that being Mr. Macabre would do justice to it. For those who may not have yet watched the interview with Brian, Return of the Living Elves starts where essentially Return of the Living Dead does, in that it is two men in a warehouse. In this case, it is a warehouse full of Christmas items, big statues, big whatever you need. Some of them great, some of them special order, some of them very disturbing. And the two men accidentally crack open a hidden snow globe that contained dark, dark magic from the North Pole and unleashed an alpha zombie elf. And so I found one little segment here involving, well, it is crazy. Uh, one of the young men is the young man is a juggalo, and his girlfriend calls herself Landfill, and she is a Christ punk, which is a punk group that instead of juggalos, they being covered in insane clown posse, they embrace Christmas, and so it's kind of a funny thought. I would kind of like to see this get made into something. So besides me reading it, and so there we go. Hope you enjoy it. And again, Return of the Living Elves by Brian Asman is available on his website, brianasmanbooks.com, where it'll be autographed. But if you want to get it a little faster through Amazon, and I will provide the Amazon link on the Fanboy Planet page where I embed this as well. So let me take some hot tea. It was not the day for cocoa, and you notice that I am holding the tea mug in the side that does not have any licensed characterization. So there you go. Although my background, I should say, is from the Hall of Haunts at the Season Screaming event, which Brian and I talked about on our interview. So, so Landfill and her companion Self Harm have broken into the warehouse because they think that her boyfriend is there somewhere, and uh, in the meantime, Self Harm was attacked by one of the zombies turned by the elf. So something clinked over near the aisle where he'd fallen, followed by a soft noise that might have been a moan. He's alive! Forgetting her trepidation, Landfill ran towards the noise. She vaulted over a box of spilled mistletoe and rounded the corner, relieved her friend was still kicking. Grievously wounded, most likely, but at least there was a chance. She staggered to a halt. Self Harm was gone. A bloody stain marred the concrete floor where he'd fallen, alongside some gray and white bits she didn't care to inspect too closely. This was definitely the spot. She hadn't gotten turned around. Must have gotten up, she thought, which meant he was ambulatory, which meant his wounds couldn't be nearly as bad as she first thought. A Christmas miracle! Yo, Self Harm! Landfill called again. Where you at? Her eyes flicked back to the stain on the floor. There really was a lot of blood. Then again, she didn't know how much blood people had, or if a big guy like Self Harm had extra. They never taught her stuff like that in school. Landfill frowned, turning in a slow circle, listening for more moans, footsteps, anything. Self. The other Crispunk jumped out from behind a shelf, grabbing her by the throat, pushing her up against a toppled crate. Landfill grabbed his wrists, tried to rip his fingers away, but he was too strong. She struggled in his grasp. Unlike the trucker, Self's harmed skin wasn't an ooey gooey green, but it had a weird tint to it, and his breath just stank like stale hot chocolate and half assed dental care. But the flesh around his forehead was all chewed up. His face was streaked with blood, and his eyes were dull, dead. A tiny dollop of pinkish brain matter fell from his exposed skull and splattered on the floor. Self Harm leaned in and slowly licked her cheek. Come on, baby. It's cold outside, he murmured in her ear. Landfill kneed him in the balls. Self Harm made a soft oof noise and let go, hands going to his crotch, face screwed up in pain. That a nutshot bothered him, while his much more gnarly head wound did not, confirmed all sorts of suspicions that Landfill long harbored about her friend. Landfill grabbed the closest thing at hand, a ceramic gingerbread house, and smashed it over Self Harm's head. He crumpled to the ground, moaning, then crawled across the floor in a bloody circle, leaving the world's most disgusting snail trail in his wake. She looked about for another weapon. More plastic crap. Stay down, she yelled. Don't make me hurt you again. Self Harm groaned in response, bumping headfirst into the metal shelving. He grabbed the shelf, pulling himself up to his feet. Never should have dated a juggalo, Self Harm said bitterly, his words almost unintelligible through the blood and phlegm and gruesome head injury. Chris Punks belong with our own. It. He doubled over in a coughing fit, yellow sputum splodging the ground. He wiped a hand across his mouth, then whipped his head around, jaw outstretched, skin greening, twisted teeth wriggling out of his gums. It's unnatural. Self Harm threw himself at her like she was the last sugar plum Danish in the Starbucks display case. Landfill turned and ran, banging her hip painfully on the shelving. She rounded the corner, nearly tripping over his beloved snowman, large with a corncob, and made for the loading dock, pumping her arms as hard as she could. Self Harm's heavy boots clumping behind her all the while, like the world's most inconsiderate reindeer prancing on a rooftop. Getting closer. The dark rectangle of the loading dock door seemed too far away, and he was just on her heels. She'd never make it. Then she saw the barrel full of snow shovels casually pushed up against the wall. Passing the barrel, Landfill grabbed a handle and wrenched one free, then dove forward, tucking and rolling with the shovel clutched tightly in her hands, landing in a crouch and simultaneously twisting around, swinging the shovel with all her might. She nailed Self Harm dead in the face. He spun away, landing heavily on the floor, while the blade of the shovel vibrated like a tuning fork, a strong, powerful, dissonant note buzzing in her ears, echoing throughout the warehouse. Landfill stood, shovel at the ready. Self Harm pushed himself up to hands and knees, more dollops of brain matter leaking out of his skull. Evidently not the cells that had harbored his pervy ass crush on her. He must have noticed her shadow looming over him, because he turns slightly, looking up at her, a slack expression on the remains of his face. Landfill, please. Home alone, motherfucker! She laid into him with the shovel, smashing his head again and again, knocking him flat on his stomach, then switched her grip, raising the shovel high above her head, brought the blade down on the back of Self Harm's neck. Landfill jabbed him again and again, slamming the snow shovel into his neck. Blood flew everywhere, crimson droplets spattering her cheeks. The zombified Chris Punk writhed, limbs flailing uselessly. Landfill stomped on his back, bore down with the shovel, face straining with effort. She let out a scream, and then, with a soft, anticlimactic plop, Self Harm's head separated from his body and rolled away down the aisle, coming to a rest next to a box train set. Choo choo, asshole, Landfill said, wiping the snow shovel off on Self Harm's still twitching legs. Somebody whistled over to her left, then said, Nothing gets the job done like a Super Scoop 700. Landfill whirled, blood flecked, shovel cocked. A man stood in the shadows, maybe 20 feet away. She couldn't see much, other than a sizable belly and a snow white beard glinting in the darkness. Come on out of there now, Landfill called, or else I'm gonna. Easy now, the man said, stepping into the light, both hands up like her snow shovel was actually a 357 Magnum. Landfill gaped at him. She dropped the shovel, which hit the ground with such a clatter, but she didn't even notice, because a few feet away, standing under the brutal and unforgiving warehouse lights, holding a crowbar and wearing nothing but a stained, too small blue shirt and white boxers dotted with red hearts, it was Santa Claus. Once again, available Brian Asman's Return of the Living Elves, which isn't going to work very much on streaming to see this cover. I will overlay it. A lot of fun. Really enjoyed this novella, and Though I did say, it starts with kind of aping the Return of the Living Dead format. It's actually, it goes off in its own wild directions, and very funny, very fun, and yes, as you could tell, a little gross, just a little. So thank you. I wanted to do something a little different, and so there you go. Hope you're all having a great holiday, and I'll see you in the new year. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. And visit fanboyplanet.com for other features, reviews, interviews, previews, and of course, listening to the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.